speaker of the day, and hope everyone's had a great time. This has been amazing for me. So, Justin Van Kleeck is the president of Triangle Chance for All, a nonprofit organization based in Chatham County, North Carolina, that runs a micro sanctuary for farm animals and promotes ethical veganism. We currently offer lifetime sanctuaries, 60 hens, 6 roosters, and a potbelly pig. He and his wife Rosemary also are developing an online hub called the Micro Sanctuary Movement to help others start animal sanctuaries on small scales. Justin is a writer on topics related to ethical veganism, intersections of veganism, and other social justice movements and sustainability. His work has been published by our in-house vegan publishers, Project Intersect, Sustainablog, and other media outlets. So please help me welcome Justin Van Kleeck.
Sure, I'm loud. I can talk. That's all right. Thanks. So hi everybody. My name is Justin Van Kleeck. I have this in my hand because I'm a writer, not a speaker. They're two very different things. In case you did not know that, but I'll do my best. So I'm the president of Triangle Chance for All. So as Helene said, we're a nonprofit organization, and our mission is to provide or secure a permanent sanctuary to farmed animals in central North Carolina. Our goal is to liberate animals from the agricultural system and provide them with a lifetime of respect on our 3-acre micro sanctuary, or to also place them at other sanctuaries if we're not able to keep them at our sanctuary. So we also promote ethical veganism as a necessary way to end the exploitation of all animals, along with the rescue. So all of that probably sounds fairly familiar to you, except for the micro sanctuary bit. So we call ourselves a micro sanctuary because we're about 5, 10, 50, even 100 times smaller than most other farmed animal sanctuaries that you probably are familiar with. But along with those physical measurements, we also see micro sanctuary as a concept. For us, it is a state of mind and a perspective on the world as our place as caregivers that is much more than just about property lines and resident numbers. So micro sanctuary is also a movement. As we started our outreach through Triangle Chance for All, we quickly realized just how many other people are already creating sanctuaries where they are with whatever resources that they currently have, and as well as how many more are keenly interested in creating sanctuaries of their own. So my partner Rosemary and I are working to create the micro sanctuary movement online, which we see as a real center point for all these people who are doing sanctuaries in so many different ways, not just get a huge tract of land, bring in hundreds of animals, and raise money. There's nothing wrong with that. That type of farm sanctuary saves hundreds of lives, thousands of lives every single year, but there are other ways to do sanctuary as well. So you see, for us, Triangle Chance for All and Micro Sanctuary is about much more than our sanctuary and our residents. Obviously, it would be pretty awesome for you to donate your money to TCA and support our rescued animals and the work that we do that way. That's awesome. But our vision of sanctuary is much more populist and action-oriented than that. You see, what we want to do is we want to inspire you to engage with farmed animals personally and to see them in completely new ways. As individuals, yes, but also as companions, family members, loved ones, and the fascinating beings who they are, each and every single one. So you see, I have learned something revolutionary through our work at Triangle Chance for All. When you put your time, energy, passion, and compassion into action by creating a sanctuary for animals, and especially for farmed animals, your relationship with animals and the world shifts profoundly. In my experience, your understanding of and empathy for animals deepen, open up, and provide an almost visceral relevance and imperative to everything that you do for them. I was vegan for over 15 years before I started rescuing and working with farmed animals, and it completely changed my perception of my veganism. It's always something that was very much about big picture, higher level abstract issues, and just getting to be around farmed animals every day has completely changed that perspective, and it made me realize the individuality of this fight. It's not about huge numbers, it is about individuals. That relevance is something that I experience every single day at our micro sanctuary. So perhaps not surprisingly then, creating sanctuary is as much about you as a caregiver as it is about the animals you rescue. So just to give you some examples, so many times when I walk out of the back door of our house, I gingerly step down the stairs into the yard where our resident chickens live. I step gingerly because I know that the chickens, especially Amandine the hen, who we'll see up here, have gotten wise to the fact that my entrance to the yard usually means that a treat is in store. So the ruse is short-lived. Amandine inevitably comes toddling across the yard on her little legs, an emotion that is as graceful as it is awkward. I usually sprinkle a mix of grains and seeds onto the ground, and Orion, the rooster of that flock, begins to cluck with short, excited sounds as he picks up and drops kernels of corn, a sunflower seed, a wheat berry, in a process that is called tidbitting. So roosters, when they find food, their job is not to eat the food, but to actually show the hens where the food is. So they get really, really excited. It's really cute. So they'll pick it up and put it down and pick it up and put it down. The other hens are beckoned by his proclamations that something awesome has been found. And once they arrive, he proceeds to select certain morsels that he thinks would be good for them to eat. Often they just ignore him and eat what they want. But he continues to cluck excitedly at the food, and then, of course, to make scornful sounds that seem to tell the hens that they ought to be listening to his rooster's wisdom. He does like to think that he's in charge. Now, our chickens talk almost constantly, conversing in their own parliament of fowls. The boys especially make themselves heard, in particular when the food is discovered, or, and this is even more endearing, when one of the hens is nesting to lay an egg. The hens themselves are quiet when nesting, each laboring for the consummation of that natural task, which we humans have hijacked and made vastly unnatural, often ultimately fatal. The roosters, on the other hand, are easily excitable and complain woefully while their hen is laying. It's extremely cute. So these are just some of the many voices I hear every day, and every day I take the time to listen to what they're saying. At a sanctuary, at our micro sanctuary, attending to the animals with respect and compassion makes possible so many opportunities to learn about our fellow earthlings. Though not human, chickens and all other animals do in fact speak. They have voices, though so often we silence them with our human din. Even before my life with chickens began, I myself found opportunities to speak on behalf of others, for non-human animals, for the earth, and for other humans, all of whom have been cheated of justice and respect in a system fueled by exploitation. After years of this rhetorical activism, I realized something rather troubling. Once one gets in the rhythm of speaking, it is dangerously simple to get caught up in the act, to get caught up in the sound of hearing my own voice and in the shimmering abstractions that language creates. That makes it far too easy to trip over my own tongue as the speaking becomes a matter of process and form, not of having an intentional impact on individuals and ecosystems. For in the intoxication of speech, in the blissful wandering of the mind around the cavern of itself, I find it nearly impossible to not lose perspective, to remain grounded, to listen to the lone, quiet voice of self-reflection that draws me down into the reality of my body, my life, myself, my marriage, my family, and the vast world I inhabit outside of myself. Finding one's own voice is a process of constant struggle. It's an internal and external labor of discrimination amongst the legion of voices that scream in order to silence us. It has taken me decades to even hear a hint of that voice, all the while recognizing more clearly that it is not one, but multitudes, like Whitman said, and that there are so many others, not my own, who need to be heard. Amidst the voices of the chickens, I'm forced to confront a monumental question. What can I do to silence the noise of society so that their wisdom might be heard, be internalized, and be transformed into a catalyst for change? There's a delicate beauty in the act of listening, of attending to. To cultivate a chosen silence and perceive it as active, engaging, and enlightening is not what we have been taught to do. We have learned that silences are meant to be filled. The world is a noisy, noisy place as a result. So much of the noise and distraction around us is of our own making, and it serves as a convenient way to keep us from more important questions and issues. Amongst all of this numbing cacophony, those of us fighting injustice and the oppression of others position ourselves as the voices, the agents, the change makers for those who have been robbed of the power to speak, to act, to make change. But we are not their voice. The oppressed, be they human or non-human, have a voice. Though the efforts to silence them are myriad and mighty, they have a voice and they have never stopped speaking. We just have found it easier to stop listening. We may help them to be heard, though. We may break down barriers so that they may be attended to, and we may give them venues in which to speak. What we cannot and must not do is to minimize what they have to say because their language is not ours. We cannot relegate them to silence because their speech is unfamiliar, challenging, and not for our benefit. We must open up the gaps and the silences so that they might be heard. We must hear their speech for what it is, the indelible expression of who and what they are. And once we hear, we must then allow ourselves to listen. If we listen, if we attend to the world around us, we may come to understand that sanctuaries are not, in fact, solutions to the problem. The only solution lies in totally overhauling our self-serving conceptions of non-humans, as well as other humans, which we frequently do, and perfecting the art of listening as we participate in endless transformative dialogues with the world around us, not the same old monologue of our species we are usually deafened by. So let us then speak with the animals, not for them, and offer them what gaps and silences we can so that they too might be heard. And what better way to do this than by creating a sanctuary with what we have, where we are, who we are right now. Thank you. So I kept that intentionally short because I wanted to have a lot of time for questions and conversation. So does anybody have questions who are not familiar maybe with Triangle Chance for All and with the micro-sanctuary idea? Does anybody have questions or anything that points would like to raise? I'd love to start a conversation and not just stand up here and talk the whole time. Yeah, that's a great question. So we have a variety of events and volunteer work days at the micro-sanctuary. We're actually having our first volunteer work day next Sunday, the 26th. So if you're interested, find us on Facebook, Triangle Chance for All, and also check out our website, and we'll have announcements there of opportunities to come out. Because we're so small and we're on a private property, we're not like a typical sanctuary where they're basically open hours and you just show up and take a tour. So we do need to arrange visits, but if you'd like to come out, definitely get in touch with us and we'll be happy to try to schedule something to have you out. We're also planning to hold several times a year larger open events. That back at the end of May, we had our basically our micro sanctuary debut, which was a big vegan barbecue. We'll have events like that at our place as well. And then throughout the year, we have different classes and other opportunities. So I'm hoping that next year we can really kick it into higher gear and have a lot of educational opportunities out at the micro sanctuary. Everything from chicken care for people who are vegan to veganic gardening and growing some of your own food. To all sorts of different things that are, kind of related to sustainable living while also, vegan living at the same time. So, great question. Yes?
You said you have chickens and roosters.
Mm-hmm.
How do you deal with them propagating on the sanctuary versus keeping spaces for babies?
That's a great question. Well, for us, the greatest harm that you can do is to allow more domesticated animals to be bred into existence. I can get into a longer conversation about the problems with domestication as an institution and the effect that has on individual bodies. But luckily, chicken population control is extremely easy. It basically boils down to collecting all the eggs every day and then feeding them back to the chickens. So a lot of people are kind of taken aback when I mention that we feed all the eggs back to the hens and the roosters, but actually the eggs are their favorite treat. They love them. And it's good because we've done so much genetic biological manipulation of chickens, we've taken an animal that you would typically in the wild raise or produce 12 to 15 eggs maybe once or twice a year for the purpose of reproduction, and brought them to a point where they produce anywhere from 250 to 300 eggs. So they're laying almost every single day. And that, as you can probably imagine, that takes a huge toll on their body. So by feeding the eggs back to the hens, we provide a lot of that nutrition back to them, which, is honestly just an effort for us to try to stave off a lot of the reproductive cancers and things that they're probably going to fall prey to. because chickens are basically bred to self-destruct at about 4 years old or so, after they stop producing so many eggs. So we're really just trying to race against the clock and do as much as we can to keep them healthy, because we want to keep them around for as long as we can. So yeah, we just collect the eggs every day, and the roosters are mixed in with the hens. So if we did not and we allowed them to go broody and sit on their eggs, they could theoretically produce more chickens. But the last thing that we want to happen is for more animals to be brought into existence, only to go through that experience. So we collect eggs every day, we feed them back, and for us, it is the most sensible thing to do, because it feeds that nutrition back to the hens. They really love to eat it. And I mean, if you think about it, the eggs are really their property. It's not ours to decide what to do with, it's theirs. So we're just giving them back something that they produce to do what they will with it. So, yeah. Yeah, you have a question?
So, well, I wanted to kind of comment on talking about communication with animals. We went to the animal rights conference when it was in DC the last, and Michael Weberman gave this great talk about giving animals back their agency.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember thinking that, wow, yes, there was a lot of kind of two sides talking about, like there was a big debate about, abolitionism versus welfarism and all that going on at the conference. And I remember thinking, well, we need to listen to the chickens, because yes, there are, or the animals, all the farm animals.
Mm-hmm.
Sure, there's some farm animals who probably would be like, well, yes, abolitionism is the only answer. I'll stay in this tiny, battery cage until you set me free. And others would probably be like, no, if the best I can do is a bigger cage, I'll take the bigger cage. Like, we can't make that decision for them. So just hearing you talk now sort of related that back to me, that I do think that animals will communicate with us. We're the ones who refuse to acknowledge and learn their language. Their language, it's sort of like if you have two people who don't speak the same language. One speaks French, one speaks English, and you get them together, they still will find a way to communicate.
Right.
And it's the same with animals. If you connect with them and are open to trying to learn what they're trying to say to you, you would be surprised how much of a voice and how much they can communicate. And I really do believe that as we evolve and connect to them and are open to listening and learning their language, that is a key to the animal rights movement, because the more people that understand them, the more people that are going to hear them, the more people that, because there's a fair amount of people, and I was one of them not very long ago, who if they had any idea the suffering that is going on would absolutely be horrified and against it. But it's just easy to ignore it, because we're not listening to their voices. Like you said, they do have a voice, and we can understand their language. We just have to make that effort to learn it.
Well, I mean, and the thing for me that I found most kind of, enlightening was by, listening to them with that respect, and not just, okay, well, yeah, they're kind of noisy, but give me the eggs. What that actually showed me was just how complete as individuals they are outside of whatever benefit I as a human might be able to gain from them. And for me, that was really important, because it made me understand the kind of key point that the individuality of the animals plays in everything we're doing. Because as I said, I think it's so easy for us to get caught up in these huge numbers. Okay, so 9 billion chickens are slaughtered every year, billions more are in the system, waiting to be killed. And I mean, but what do you do with 9 billion? I mean, as an individual, the numbers are just such that they're overwhelming, but then what do you do with that actively? I mean, it's something that it's very easy to kind of feel overwhelmed, but then stay at that abstract level. And for me, by directly interacting with animals in that way and realizing the amount of communication that they have going on and the individuality of their voices behind that, to really respect just how important it is that we remember that we are fighting constantly for individuals, and that every choice that we make is a matter that is is borne by the individuals who suffer and die because of our choices. So, you know, you think about 9 billion chickens, you think about a chicken truck driving down the highway, right there, that one truck would overwhelm most sanctuaries. You know, and those are all individuals in those cages. And I mean, when you think about that, it's just staggering. But then you realize you go to a sanctuary and you get to spend time with one individual chicken or watch several individual chickens interacting together in the way that they live independently of our manipulation and our, you know, management. It just really is profound and I think very humbling, because it you know, you can realize just why it is important that you treat them with respect and not just as means to end. So. And I think the voice issue is important for that, because we may never understand what chickens are saying to each other, but the fact that they're communicating is the essential part. The fact that they're individuals who have lives, who have desires, who have intentions that have nothing to do with us. And as far, you know, as far as I'm concerned, that's something that we must ultimately, you know, always respect. So, hey, Michael.
So, you know, I think all sanctuaries probably have their challenges.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm sure there are some that are unique or more important for, you know, a micro sanctuary
Right.
to have to do with. And I know you might have certain segments of society that's, oh yeah, I'm really gung-ho, and as soon as I know how to do that, I'm going to go for it. And you might have another subset that is kind of like, oh, I really believe in this, but I'm super intimidated
Mm-hmm.
by starting my own sanctuary.
Right.
So what are some of, you know, the challenges that you face as a micro sanctuary?
Mm-hmm.
How do you deal with them? And one that I'm in particular interested in and wonder about that I haven't asked you about before is, so maybe at like farm sanctuary they have a whole staff.
Right.
So Gene can go do his thing,
Mm-hmm.
and he has a whole staff to care for the
Right.
animals.
Right.
And you have a great board, and you're developing a, you know, volunteer network.
I
But
think
imagine
I know
it'd
where
be
this is
pretty-
going.
I imagine
Yeah.
it'd be pretty hard for you to,
Uh-huh.
if you needed or wanted to head out of town.
Right.
What would you do? Things like that.
Not. Probably. No, that's a great question. So let me break that up in a couple of answers. So I think for us as a micro sanctuary, and this is true for a lot of smaller sanctuaries, whether they are micro or whether they're just, you know, not a huge staff with millions of dollars in revenue, the fundamental challenge is getting on people's radar and getting them to recognize the value and the importance of smaller sanctuaries. So just to give you an example of why smaller sanctuaries are crucial, a sanctuary like Animal Place in California will take part in a rescue of thousands of battery cage hens. They get those hens to their sanctuary or in their network, and those hens then usually will be shuffled off, the ones who are sicker or who would require more care, to smaller sanctuaries in the area. I know this because we network with a fair number of them out in California, and they're constantly taking hens with broken legs or with, you know, some sort of an illness from larger sanctuaries who get them in and do not have, you know, the resources to spend that amount of time and energy on a particular with a sickness. So having those smaller sanctuaries in operation like that, because the difference between some of these larger places and the smaller places is that all of our resources are focused in on going on the animals and the animal care. So, which is good because that means, you know, per individual, I think we really focus on spending a lot of time and a lot of resources on their care and well-being. But that means that we're not, you know, we do not have a staff. We do not have, you know, fundraising materials and news and letters that go out in the mail and stuff like that. Because our focus is very different. And so it can be really helpful for us when we do reach people, because we can really help them get to know individual animals at our sanctuary because we spend so much time, you know, focused on them. But it can also be a challenge just to get on people's radar because, you know, we're not doing as much on the larger scale marketing and promotions and stuff that some of the other larger farm sanctuaries have the capability to do. And again, I mean, I think the work they do is fantastic because they're saving so many animals and also bringing people to the sanctuary to interact with the animals. But we're, you know, never going to be able to match their ability to fundraise and that sort of thing. So it can be a real challenge just to get on people's radar and to help them understand the role that smaller sanctuaries play in the animal rescue kind of field, Because when you say farm sanctuary, the first thing that comes to mind is, farm sanctuary and Woodstock and these larger places that have gained a lot of global attention. And they're wonderful for providing role models and models to kind of, to work towards, but it is a hard challenge if you're living in a suburban neighborhood with a 1/10 of an acre lot to think, okay, I want to open up a sanctuary. That's what I went through years ago when I was started getting interested in farm sanctuaries. I was looking at farm sanctuary with, hundreds of acres and hundreds of animals, or Woodstock, and I was thinking, okay, well, how am I going to raise several $100,000 to buy a property, get a staff, get some animals? And it was just, I hit a wall. It was so intimidating just thinking about the back-end logistics of getting there that it just shut down my thinking process whatsoever. So jumping forward a few years, what we've really tried to think about with the micro-sanctuary idea is not, okay, this is where you have to be in order to have a sanctuary, but what do you have now and how can that become a sanctuary? So, it's making people feel legitimate for having a couple of hens and a rooster. And that's a micro-sanctuary, because those animals have gotten out of the system. They have a place where they're cared for and respected as individuals, and their life is completely different, and they're never going back into the food system again. For me, that is crucial work, because that's an opportunity to get as many individuals as we can out. And so I think one thing that's really important is helping people to understand the legitimacy of smaller sanctuaries as well. It's not a matter of lesser care or lesser attention just because the sanctuary happens to be a little bit smaller. So one of the most rewarding things in doing the work that we have and the outreach that we've been doing through TCA is connecting with people who have a couple of goats and a flock of chickens in their yard, and they're vegan, and they're like, oh my God, I never knew anybody else was actually doing this and calling it a sanctuary. So it's helping people to see that, wait a minute, I too am a sanctuary, and I think that's very empowering. So now getting back to the other part of your question, yes, we do not have a staff, and that means a lot of hands-on work for us. And as I said before, I had very limited experience with chickens before getting started with this, but unfortunately, a lot of the material that's out there is for how to handle farmed animals is written from a production perspective. So it's like, if your chicken gets bumblefoot, cull. If your chicken gets a spot on her wing, cull. If your chicken gets sick, cull. And we're not going to do that, obviously. So a lot of it is we've been networking with other sanctuaries, and the smaller sanctuaries are so much very approachable. We have a Facebook group called Vegans with Chickens. It's an amazing group, but basically it's individuals, people who have small sanctuaries all coming together on Facebook and saying, I just saw this on my hen's foot, what do I do? And it's obviously not vet care, but what it is people who have hands-on experience working with the animals, giving them an opportunity to share their experience and their information. And it has been a lifesaver. It is our go-to when something comes up with a chicken, because we're more likely to get an honest answer focused on the well-being of the chicken there than going to a typical vet like at NC State or something like that, So it's really a matter of kind of committing yourself to do the research to learn how to interact with them. But just like the first time you got a dog or a cat, you really have to figure out what it means to care for this animal in the way that is best for his or her species. It is no different for a chicken or a pig. The real difference is our conception. We conceive as dogs or cats as companions, but chickens and pigs and goats and sheep are livestock, and so they live in another totally separate realm from the dogs and the cats. And for me, I think that's a false construction. I think that they're all individuals, and the way that we relate to them and learn about relating to them and caring for them is the same. It's all just that process of kind of getting to know that species and the individuals and their needs. So it's been a constant learning process for us, and it always will be a learning process. But again, once I think you see yourself as a caregiver, it then becomes just part of your life and part of what you do, and it's totally doable. If you're interested in something like an internship at Farm Sanctuary or Woodstock, that is definitely a great way to get hands-on experience while getting a lot of guidance from people who have been doing it for a long time. But you can also do it yourself in ways that are really that are just as sustainable. It's really just a matter of kind of focusing on the well-being of the chicken. So for me personally, and I think this is true for a lot of people who have sanctuaries, The last thing that I would want to happen is where I'm an administrative person and I'm not spending hours of the day cleaning up chicken poop. I know that sounds kind of funny, but it's actually really rewarding work. And as I said before, I mean, for me, it constantly brings home why it is that I'm vegan. And being able to care for the animals in that way as well as interact with them is the most rewarding thing that I could ever be doing. And the advocacy work really gets fueled by a lot of that. So I'm not going to be taking a vacation anytime soon, but personally for me, that's perfect. But if that's not your lifestyle, I mean, just like you have pet sitters for your dog or cat, you can very easily work in, a little, not always being tied down to your house, but it's really just a matter of kind of what works for you. But again, I mean, the real thing just to keep in mind is, if you commit to rescuing these animals, like what can you do to make their life as happy and as healthy as possible? And that does not necessitate having hundreds of acres and millions of dollars. So that was a really long answer, but hopefully I covered all the bases. So, yeah, thanks. Any other questions or comments? Yes.
Can you tell us about Mott?
Yes. So Mott is going to cycle through here somewhere. Mott is one of our most recent rescues. He is a potbelly pig who was listed as a she for the entire time that he was at a shelter outside of Charlotte. And pigs come into shelters around this area for a number of reasons, whether they're teacup pigs who people quickly realized actually will not fit into a teacup after about a week or two. So if anybody tries to sell you a teacup pig, please do not fall for it. So he was in a shelter. We have no idea how he got there. He came in as a stray, and his whole period was getting up to its kind of final point where he would most likely have been euthanized. Some people will adopt potbelly pigs as pets. Some people will adopt them and eat them. It's a real crapshoot with shelters. Some are better than others, but most shelters have zero screening process for farmed animals and have a very low adoption fee. So you can go adopt a turkey to eat more cheaply than you can buy one from a farmer. That's a huge problem. So that is part of the reason why we got into doing what we do, was realizing that these animals have this tiny little window in which they can be gotten out of this food system, and very few people are making the most of that and finding them permanent caring homes. So anyway, Mott is a fantastic potbelly pig. He's just amazing. He is very shy. He came into us being really scared of humans. Anne over here was the volunteer who brought him from Gaston County. And in the past 2 weeks that we've had him, he's completely changed. He will roll over for belly rubs occasionally now. He comes up to us and wants to be petted. He wants to eat food from our hands. He now sleeps curled up on blankets in a baby pool. Do not ask me why that works for him, but it works for him, so we're going with it. But yeah, he's a black potbelly pig. He's probably 3 to 4 years old, weighs about 130 pounds. And I love chickens. Chickens are just fantastic, but that is Mott right there. And there's just something about looking into the eye of a pig that makes you realize we're not, as much as we think we are. We're not the only ones who have lots of stuff going on upstairs. And if you've not ever spent time around a pig, I beg that you do so, because it will completely just change the way that you see bacon and sausage and all of these other pork products out there, because you realize just how much of a disservice and a travesty it is that we use animals in any way, let alone to just keep them in a crate and then kill them to eat them. So Mott is, he's an amazing being. I mean, all of our sanctuary residents, I mean, I could just spend all day watching them be who they are. And that is why I think the idea of micro-sanctuary is so empowering to people, because, it's scary, but once you get into doing it, I mean, like I said, it completely changes the way that you see animals, your veganism, and why other people should be vegan, because you can always directly connect it to an individual, which I think is the way it should be.
I wonder if, there's a big backyard chicken movement.
Yeah.
That I know there's all the problems with that, but I do think, like, my hope is that the change will happen the other way in some cases.
Mm-hmm.
That if there's activism that movement where they realize that these chickens that they've become attached to and they have in their backyard, and yes, they're exploiting them for their eggs because they don't know any better, and they bought them,
Right.
you know, through some mail order company that's doing all the, that's creating more and more. And but I do think that there is some. I've known a few people that had backyard chickens who really would just talk about them like they would talk about their dogs. But yes,
Yeah.
they're eating their eggs and they didn't know.
Yeah.
But if you, and this years ago when I didn't know either. So I do think that there is some hope that there will be a movement through that venue
Mhm.
that will, some of those people will have an aha moment
Right.
if they're educated to say,
Right.
oh, it's not good for my chickens to
Right.
lay this many eggs. Oh, this is, you know.
Yeah, well, and see, the danger is with like improvements in environmental efficiency. Like the better gas mileage you get, the more likely you are to drive farther. You know, my perspective on it is that, you know, the difference between a backyard flock and a battery cage is really an aesthetic difference. Ethically, you know, the chickens are still in the same position. So the problem is that the messages that backyard chicken keepers are getting are, you're awesome. They're not getting the message that, hey, wait a minute, have you thought about this? And that's what we're trying to do. We rarely talk about factory farming through Triangle Chance for All. We're more interested in engaging people in conversations on, hey, we have 22 chickens here, 20 of them came from backyard chicken flocks. Let's talk about why they suffered in that system. And, you know, and I think, you know, hopefully people will recognize that and pay attention, because we've gotten into some fairly contentious debates about, well, I treat my chickens like they're family members, and yeah, I still eat their eggs, but whatever. And I'm like, well, let me talk to you about the biology of chickens, you know. And when you eat their eggs, you're basically normalizing the consumption of their eggs, and you're therefore normalizing and you know, supporting the persistence of domesticated chickens, which, you know, when they go through that experience every single day, that can never be okay. There can never be a happy egg, you know, and you realize that when you watch a chicken in the nest for 2 hours a day, and she's very clearly not happy. And there's no chicken who gets to escape that. So yeah, so the trick is not patting people on the back when they're doing something that's better than factory farming, but also, you know, kind of trying to educate them about the larger issue.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah, my thinking in that was definitely to hoping that they would realize what they're doing
Right.
is wrong, so that they stop
Mhm.
eating the eggs,
Right.
and that if the next time, and that basically converted having backyard chickens into a backyard sanctuary,
Right.
so that in the future, rather than than supporting that system,
Yep.
if they wanted to have chickens, they would adopt.
Yeah,
them,
and that does
adopt
happen,
them,
right.
and-
And that has happened. We've told
Yeah.
the stories of some people who got sheep to raise for meat, and they had an epiphany and said, oh my God, I'm vegan. You know, and that does happen.
Yeah.
The trick is that if the messages that you're hearing when you have that backyard flock is, yay, backyard chickens, I love eggs, it makes it harder, I think, a lot of times to have that epiphany. So it is really important, I think, that, you know, as vegan advocates and as people who have sanctuaries or interact with sanctuaries, to be able to talk about why even those forms of better use are actually still really problematic. And for me, it always comes back to the individuals, because every single species you can directly point to biological problems that result from the process of making them, you know, making them food. So yeah, it's a great point, and I would follow that up with just, you know, we need to find better ways to communicate with that sort of subset of people to help educate them about why, you know, instead of eating the eggs and having a backyard flock, why not create a sanctuary, you know? So yeah. But yeah, I've encountered a number of people who rescue chickens and then use them for eggs after that, and for me, that's a real problem. So.
I would think that would.
Well, it's part of our culture too. We all call ourselves animal lovers while we eat, you know, hamburgers and stuff like that. So it's a real trick to. It's real easy to compartmentalize like that. But you know, if you can maximize that individual connection with an animal and then turn that into potentially a fulcrum for getting them to go vegan, that's great. Bye. So yeah, so any other last questions? Or yeah.
Wondered about that because I've been vegan for a long time. This is the first time I've heard about feeding the eggs back to the chickens.
Mm-hmm.
So I wondered if that's a more recent kind of development or research about chickens.
Yeah. I think it's mostly just really a lack of telling that part of the story, because there have been sanctuaries around that have been doing that for a long time, but you know, I think just in the past few years, I think have sanctuaries getting on the radar more, especially of vegans as well. And I mean, I know I was the same way. I was like, okay, eggs are out. I'm not paying any attention anymore. But then when you have chickens and you have eggs in your yard, you're like, crap, what do I do with the eggs? So yeah, it's new knowledge to a lot of people. And I think that's a really cool way to have that conversation about why is eating eggs an unethical act. And you can talk about, well, you know, the chickens love to eat them. The chickens need that nutrition back. But it is not something that people talk about very much. And I think a lot of it too is that in the industry's eyes and in even veterinarians' eyes who deal with poultry, you know, a chicken eating her egg is like the worst thing ever. You know, it was funny. Yeah, we actually have a really good bird vet in Durham, and when we took our first chicken in and we're like, yeah, we feed the eggs back to the chickens. He's like, oh, wait a minute, don't do that because they'll start breaking all the eggs. And we're like, we're vegan. He's like, okay, well, never mind then. You know, see, that's the thing is that when they're thinking of it from you want to harvest those eggs, why would you let your chicken eat the egg? You know, and again, like I said before, it's the chicken's property. Why are we eating it? So, yeah, it's really interesting though. But yeah, not much of that is told. Because I think also too, a lot of people are grossed out about that idea. You know, somehow it's gross for a hen to eat her own egg, but we can go to town on them. That's fine. So I don't know, but yeah, I mean, hopefully, you know, we can start to tell more of these stories and get the awareness out because, you know, there are so many instances in which you can tell the story of the individual animals and why, you know, anything other than veganism is a disservice to them. So yeah, that's a great point.
Yeah,
Okay.
just had a short comment. It gets really weird when you know these people who have backyard chickens. If we have an acquaintance who we used to be better friends with, and we still were, we would just directly be like, guy. But it's kind of, I vacillate between hope and yeah, just kind of, oh my god.
Yeah.
Because he's the kind of person who like absolutely loves these chickens. Like they all have names and all of that. But he still eats chicken.
Mm-hmm.
Not just he eats the eggs, he still eats chicken. And I'll see him post on Facebook an article about insects and ask people not to squish insects. And like the other day, someone posted about finding a snake and killing it. He got all up in arms that the guy killed the snake. So I I don't know. It's like I try to just influence his thinking
Right.
on if I'm liking his post and he's like, don't kill insects and snakes,
Right.
and then ignoring it,
Yeah.
and he like says something about chicken.
Yeah.
But it just gets really weird and it's hard to.
Yeah. I mean, being in animal rescue and vegan advocacy is an experiment in human psychology. And I have not figured it out after 15 years of being vegan because, you know, that sort of thing, just the ability to compartmentalize and to attach to specific instances. I mean, we see it happen in society all the time. A cow gets loose from a slaughterhouse and runs down, you know, through the middle of downtown, and everybody wants to find that cow a good home while they're watching TV with a hamburger, you know. And how that happens, I have no idea. I mean, you know.
Or it's like Tom the turkey, you get
Pardoned every, oh, God. And then yeah. 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 I mean, yeah, and that psychology, I'm not sure we're ever going to figure it out, but yeah, I mean, you know, and that's why so much of advocacy work is individual, because you have to figure out you have to like triangulate where that person is and to animals and to food and, you know, and so I've not figured it out, so.
My plan is eventually one of the chickens will get sick and then I'll just hear about it and send it your way.
Yeah, so yeah, if you ever run into people who have problems and are like that, just send them to me. I'll take care of it. So. But yeah, because I have nothing else to do in my life. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. You're one-stop shop for going vegan. Yeah, but anyway. So yeah, please check us out on Facebook, Triangle Chance for All. Please check out our website and stay in touch. We'll have lots of events and other kind of outreach and involvement opportunities. So I'd love to continue this conversation. So thanks for listening to me. Yes.
Thank you so much, everyone. Just so you know, this festival couldn't have happened without all of you. Most of you not